tested a similar sample out of a can, but also tested the actual spare tire cover in this box. Now remember, he received it in this box, not sealed, not in a can, not in plastic, in air-permeable cardboard. And what was interesting that Dr. Rickenbach told you is that he actually found chloroform, detectable chloroform, even in that. Remember, he told you he was surprised. He couldn't believe he found it. Because chloroform is a volatile, and this is not sealed. So he said the fact that he found anything on that was pretty amazing. But remember, what he told you was that he found a much greater amount of chloroform in the sealed can. Remember, I think I had him put some numbers on a board, and it was in terms of percentages of the control. The control was 100 parts per million. In this item, I think he's put it at 0.08% of the control. In the can, it was 5% of the control. And again, he has said, and we will tell you, that is not a quantification. It is not a precise quantification. It's not intended to be a precise quantification. But what's interesting about it is that the rough estimate puts it in the low parts per million. The same thing that Dr. Voss found. Now, to Dr. Rickenbach, who is used to looking at chloroform in its liquid form, that wasn't a lot. But he told you, this is the first time I've ever found chloroform in any kind of solid object. Every time I've looked for chloroform, it's been in the liquid form in adulterated liquids of some sort. The case was being investigated. But even he said that he found detectable amounts of chloroform coming from the carpet in Casey Anthony's car. Nothing he'd ever seen before. And that's the significant thing about these witnesses, is they all told you the same thing. This is the first time we've seen this. Actual detectable amounts of chloroform coming from a carpet. And remember what they told you. Dr. Rickenbach agreed. The amount of chloroform in these items is far less than the amount of chloroform that would have been in that trunk a month before, because chloroform is volatile. It evaporates. It fills the space until fresh air comes in. Remember, this car was aired out by the Anthony family for hours on the 15th going into the 16th. So the chloroform that would have been there before it was opened up, when it was at the tow yard, was far greater than anything these people found. And ladies and gentlemen, I would submit to you that there has been absolutely no evidence to explain where it came from or why. Dr. Sigmund, who was the gentleman from UCF that did his initial testing of the sample, he told you that he tested the trunk 4 days after that item was removed. 4 days. It had been gone for 4 days. And yet even 4 days later, he was able to detect, even with his equipment, which he said is not as good as what Dr. Voss used. It's not it doesn't capture as much. Even he was able to find detectable amounts of chloroform in the trunk of that car, which shouldn't have been there. There shouldn't have been any chloroform in the trunk of that car, but it was there. Dr. Sigmund also told you something that was very interesting. He told you that while chloroform can be created by incidental contact between chlorine bleach and organic materials, that doesn't happen in a vacuum. That when that does happen, other compounds are created. And those compounds have not been found in this case. All that's been found is chloroform. No chlorine. Remember, I asked Dr. Furt, there's no bleach stains on that spare tire cover, are there? No, there's not. There's no, the issue was brought out that some cleaning products have small amounts of chloroform in them. And I asked Dr. Furton, were any of the other constituent components of cleaning products found? No, they weren't. All that was found in examination of that carpet and that spare tire cover were the components of decomposition and chloroform. In that, all the experts agree, including those called by the defense. Let's talk about now another subject as far as the air examination, which is the odor of decomposition, the expert testimony. The defense's primary attack upon Dr. Voss is that he has developed a device which is designed for use by law enforcement and the military. And that if by some miracle that device were to be purchased by someone in the private sector, why they would want to, you can only guess, that Dr. Voss would split with the other inventors 15% of whatever minimal royalty that Oak Ridge National Laboratory might get. That's the impeachment. That's the criticism. You saw Dr. Voss testify in this case, and you have to judge his credibility. I submit to you that Dr. Voss is an unapologetic geek. He loves what he does. I mean, when have you ever seen a scientist on the stand in a criminal case say, and this is the cool part, Dr. Voss is an unapologetic science geek. He loves the challenge of solving scientific questions. Whether it be how do you detect a body by the odor of decomposition, or whether it's maybe divining actually does work. You know, counsel sneered at him because he has the scientific curiosity to wonder if something as bizarre as that might actually have a scientific basis. Maybe he's right, or maybe he's wrong. But to say that you should disbelieve him because he has that scientific curiosity, I would submit, is inappropriate. You know, judge him by what he said. Judge him by who he is and what his experience is, and judge him fairly. But getting back to that point, when you actually boil down what Dr. Voss said and what Dr. Furton said, they really don't disagree that much. They both agree that the science of human decomposition odor has not developed to the level that there is a signature set of compounds that show human decomp. They both agree with that. They both agree that the chemical signature from this car is consistent with a decompositional event. Dr. Furton said, yes, I believe that those chemicals are from a decompositional event. So does Dr. Voss. Dr. Furton agrees that it's possibly human. And that's what Dr. Voss says. They don't really disagree that much on much of anything, other than the final conclusion. Because Dr. Voss told you that when you combine the science with his experience and what he smelled in that can, the odor that he has smelled for 30 years, I asked him, do you have an opinion based upon all of that as to whether that odor was from human decomposition? And his answer was, I can find no plausible other explanation. And I would submit to you that Dr. Furton's other explanation is not plausible. You know,